Okay, today we're talking about, I'll say it in Hebrew, chazama. Okay, so you shouldn't think I'm talking about the animals, okay, but seals. It's going to be only part one, and it goes like this. There are people who don't keep kosher, don't have nemanis to say that something is kosher. Tosa says that although they don't have nemanis, we don't think they're gonna maliciously come out and try to trick us into eating treif. They're not. That's not what we're chayshish for. It's just that if they have a benefit, then they will. If they have a benefit from the kosher, then they wouldn't feel bad about taking the kosher and leaving us with the treif. Okay, because then it's not important, so they might like it. Okay, so let's understand what that means to have a benefit. The most obvious benefit is money. Okay, the most obvious benefit, and in fact, as I tell you all the other examples, you could always boil them down to money, but the most obvious benefit is money. So, for example, if I could give you treif chicken, and I could buy treif chicken and sell them as if they're kosher chicken costs much more than treif chicken, so I could sell you treif and give for the price of treif for the price of kosher, I can make a lot of money. Okay, so that's an example where he wouldn't have nemanis. Or a variation of that is I'm factory making kosher cheese. Kosher cheese costs much more than treif cheese does, because it needs hashgacha tamidus, costs much more. And I made 5,000 pounds of cheese, and something went wrong, and a few hundred pounds of cheese went bad. So for me, I could just slip in. I have to give you an order of 5,000. That's what you thought we made 5,000 pounds of cheese. I have to give you a few hundred pounds. I take some treif and just stick it into there as a way of getting away with it and giving you the treif cheese for the price of kosher cheese. Okay. Now, another variation of that is if the person who doesn't keep kosher thinks that there's some advantage of the kosher over the treif. He thinks it tastes better or better quality like that. So like, I'm delivering a pizza. The guy who doesn't keep kosher is delivering a pizza. He thinks that kosher pizza tastes better or has a better quality. For whatever reason, he thinks it's better. So we're chayshish that he's going to bring me the treif pizza and keep for himself the kosher one. So that's really a money thing if you dig down to it, because he could just take the money and buy kosher pizza himself. But essentially, what's going on is he wants this. He has a benefit. He wants the kosher pizza without having to pay for it. So he slips you in a treif pizza or sandwich in exchange for the kosher. Okay. Another type of benefit is not to do with money directly. He has a pressure. So he has a restaurant, and the mashgiach came and checked all his lettuce for the day. And then there's too many customers show up. So he's got all these people he has to serve. He's out of lettuce. He doesn't have any lettuce to serve to people. So his benefit to use the lettuce that wasn't checked is not really that financial. I mean, in a sense it's financial, because he could just, turn down the customers and lose his customers, and that costs money. That's really what's going on, but that's not really what he's coming from. He's coming from the people who came to my store. I want to serve them. So he has a benefit to serve those people. So then we're chayshish that he would switch. He'll use the non-check lettuce when he runs out of kosher. That's another example of that. Okay.
Or if a delivery man drops something on the way.
Same idea. Yes, I didn't get that into my paper, but the same idea. Okay, so we're chayshish that he's stuck. He has to fill an order. He has to do something. So it's not the money per se, but it's just he's stuck and he has to do a thing like that. Okay. Okay. Now, if he has no benefit, then Taisa says, whoops, sorry about that. If he has no benefit, then we're not chayshish the guy. So, for example, soybean oil that's kosher doesn't cost any more, or no different than soybean oil that's not kosher. We're not chayshish he's going to switch one for the other. Why would he do that? What would be his reason to use the treif soybean oil instead of the kosher soybean oil? It's all the same. Okay, it doesn't cost any different. What do you say? Right, so there'd have to be a specific, something went wrong and he was out of it. Something happened crazy and he had to go get some. But he has no inherent benefit to take one of those. There's nothing different about this one than that one. They're all the same.
How far is yeah, so maybe it happens.
So that's a judgment, I guess. It's a judgment of how much he benefits or doesn't benefit from. Just like you say, is how much is it worth more than the other thing? Is it a benefit or is it not a benefit? Okay, so
yeah, but I could think of a scenario where he would need to suddenly get soybean oil, but it's just very far fetched. I would chayshish for all kinds of different scenarios.
Okay. That's why we hire rabbis to make the judgment. No, it's a judgment. It's a judgment. How crazy is it, and how much of a chashash? Okay. Now, this idea that we think the person only does it for a benefit has another side to it, and that is we only think that the person would switch the one for the other if he's afraid that he's going to get caught. Okay, what I mean is like this. Okay, what I mean is like this: if he could take the kosher and not put treif into there, then he has no reason to switch. Not because he doesn't want the kosher, but he has no reason to have put the treif there in its place. Okay, and this came up. It was a real story. It was a yeshiva. They took. They had their chicken. They had loads of chicken. It was very hot. They needed to cool off. They put it outside. Okay, they put it outside in the parking lot. Okay, to cool off. For whatever reason, they put it to cool off. And then they came back an hour later and they put the chickens in. They said, "Oh my gosh, who was watching the chicken? There was no simanim on it. Who knows what's with the chicken? Maybe somebody walked by." So the answer to that was, well, if somebody wanted to take your chicken, he didn't have to replace it with kosher chicken, with treif chicken. Because he has no fear of being even walk off with your chicken. Obviously, I'm not worried about being caught in the act. So I have nothing to replace. It's not like the delivery guy who has to bring you a sandwich. So if he takes your kosher one, he has to give you a treif one. But here, this guy had nothing. He had no reason to put a kosher one there. If he took it, he might have taken it. But if he took it, he wouldn't put a treif one there instead. So the chickens that we put out there an hour ago are the same chickens we're getting back. We don't have to choshesh. Why would somebody put treif here? Again, we're not. So it's a question of benefit here. It's not that there's no benefit of taking kosher. There is benefit, but there's no reason to think he would leave treif in its place as a way to and take the kosher instead.
Well, let's say you trusted a Kosher worker to watch it.
And what? No, so then you're counting on him
Right.
that he's gonna. When you come back, there's gonna be the same
Right,
10
so then
10 pieces.
that'd be worse.
Then there would be, but over here they let's put it to the parking lot. And they just like maybe somebody walked by and switched the chicken. Why would somebody switch? If he was taking your chicken, he would just take it. Okay. Now, some people take the position that the same thing. There's another situation where some people are makel, which is not as clear as this parking lot. Okay. Whenever you have the shul has cholent cooking on Friday night. Okay, they have cholent cooking, and the cholent has meat inside of it, and you have a non-Jewish custodian in the building. Okay, he has access to the whole building. So do you need simanim on the cholent or on the kitchen when this non-Jewish custodian has access to the whole kitchen? So the argument
and access when nobody's there.
right at 3:00 in the morning, he's there. There's no one there in shul in the middle of the night. Correct. I'm sorry. Yes, that's what I meant.
Simanim only when it's hufgar b'yargai. It's not hufgar. It's not basar shem salmon ayin is mutter.
Yeah,
This is only if it's hufgar b'yargai.
it's a chashash that he could switch it.
So everyone's wait, it's not hufgar. He's not in charge of it. There's no.
T-
Why
T-
is it not basar shem salmon? Basar shem
That
salmon
means he takes responsibility.
Bashas Hanam means is that it's nisalim, but there's like sort of no chashas. It's not such a real chash he's going to take it here. Even though Bashas Hanam, that technicality is mutter. If there's a chash he would switch, then we have a chash.
Who's he? The whole chash of switching is when you're mafkid to b'yargai. You give it to him to watch. He's achrei for it. Custodian is just a guy in the building who's puttering around, but he's not. Hufgar b'yargai. It's not.
He's not responsible for it.
Right. Like, for example, let's say this custodian was let go, right? But he has a code, and you didn't change the code. Is that also a chash? Because he was once.
No, that's not, I don't know if that's the same thing.
So he's saying it's the same thing. He's saying that's the same thing. The guy has no business to be in anymore. He has no business messing with the child.
Okay, so maybe I'm wrong. Okay, that's not the logic why the people said why they thought it was mutter. They said it's mutter because the guy has nothing to gain. Because if he wants cholent, he'll just take. He won't replace it with kosher. He won't put anything treif into there.
They'll hop in the morning.
So that was the question. That's what's not as clear as the chicken in the parking lot case. Okay?
You're saying that we coach him.
The question is, would it be noticeable if he walks off with a bowl?
Yeah, it's just a bucket.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
A lot of quick relation to poker.
I've worked with a lot of guys in kitchens. Only one of them really loved John.
Okay, so that's a question. There are people who are allowed. They say, "What does the guy have to gain from it? He has nothing to gain." He says, "If he wanted to take, he'll just take it. He won't replace it." And that's obviously very questionable. How many little Jose's are in his house? How many people would he take for? How much would people notice it?
What's he getting by doing that and then replacing it? Like just make his own cholent?
No, he put in treif. He'll put in treif meat. The kosher meat is better.
Better.
There's always a concern that it's cheaper. It's cheaper.
Is it better?
Well, kosher meat is for sure more expensive.
But he what was he? It's not better
So
cut. It's not like,
that's the assumption, quality wise, that it's better. That's always a chashash.
only when you have a good quality kosher meat, a chashuv cut piece of meat. So then when chashish, he'll take the chashuv piece of meat and switch it with an inferior.
So wait a second. If you order a pastrami sandwich, so you think he's gonna put in salami instead of pastrami? You'll know the difference. He's gonna put in another pastrami.
So-
The chashash is that for some reason the perception that this is a better product.
So why would unless we
It's
have a
also
reason
cheaper,
to think
right?
that? But why would we think he could get his own pastrami sandwich for the same price? Well, only if we know that it's better to have a
Well,
kosher.
there is a chash that the chash is that the guys are under the impression that the kosher meat is better
That's
quality.
Why
Is that
is that
true?
What up?
Is that
Well,
true?
well, the price is only because of all the kashrus advantages that we put into it.
So you can replace it with cheaper meat.
Right. So the question is, but is it really any better?
True. Like,
Taste-wise, is it any
His
better?
cholent's ready. He's ready to go. He's hungry. And so instead of going home to make his own cholent, he just take it and replace it with cheaper.
So the chashash is.
So you're thinking because of the time of it.
Yeah.
Okay, no, but in general, this is this assumption. Maybe it's wrong. This is an assumption that since the kosher meat costs more, it doesn't really taste any better. My pastrami doesn't taste better than the treif pastrami, but in his mind, this is a better quality.
So I'm challenging that.
Okay, that's fair. Then I'm saying we could. It's reasonable to challenge that, but that's the working assumption that it is a chef. You could argue. Okay. So now let's move on past this Taisus now to what you have to do to seal it, to make a simanim that is kosher. So the Gemara says that sometimes you need to have one siman and sometimes you need to have two simanim. Okay, the Gemara gives a bunch of examples of cases that need one siman and cases that need two simanim. Okay, and there's a machlokes now. What's the criteria? What differentiates between one siman and two siman? Okay, so the Shulchan Aruch passes like one shita, which is it depends whether what we're looking at is a shayla of a deraisa or drabanan. Meaning, how bad off would we be if the food was switched? Tells us if it's if we would be worse off. I mean, we'd end up eating an issa deraisa, then we need two simanim. If the worst is we eat issa drabanan, we get away with one siman. We don't have to be as good, be as confident that it wasn't switched. We get away with one siman because what's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is I'll eat an issa drabanan. But if it's more serious, then I need two siman. Okay, so what's some examples of issa deraisa? So I put a bunch here. They're in alphabetical order: fish, gelatin, glycerin, meat, poultry. All of those are chashashas that if it was switched, I'll eat from a min that's tamei or something that didn't have shchita or etc. or something like that. Okay, so I'll end up eating something that would be issa deraisa. Okay, and what's issa drabanan? So we have two examples so far. One is cheese, because if cheese is not kosher, it would be kvinas akum, that's issa drabanan, and milk, where it would be chol vakum. Okay, if he switches this milk for another milk, then the chash of chol vakum. Okay, so
Close down.
So he put. Okay, so
The store and buy cholvakum.
What do you say?
In America, we challenge you to find cholvakum.
So that's a good question. That's a good question. But the I thought you were going to answer a better question. Okay, which you probably remember that we talked about this. And we're going to see Kuf Tezvav, which is Shach's question, which is he says, wait a second, but the reason why not in Chal Akum is because maybe put in Chal Behemoth Tmeya. That's an Issa Deraisa. Okay, that's Shach. We talked about that. I'm sure you remember that we talked about that. What? Okay, that's Shach talks about that. Okay, so but now the two questions that are not as clear, that are more questionable, are wine and grape juice that are not mavushal. If it's mavushal, then it's taka one, and vegetables that are not checked. Okay, and those are like this. The Gemara says that for wine, I'm going to say wine, but I mean grape juice and wine. That's not mavushal. You need two simanim. Okay, so the Gemara says that you need two simanim. So Mechaber brings it down. You need two simanim for that. Okay, but the Taz says the only reason why you need two simanim, stam yain is only asim d'rabanan. So why, according to Mechaber, should you need two simanim for wine that's not mavushal? So he says it's because of chibas nisuch. I'm sorry. It's the goyim are so interested to use wine for avoid zara that we're choishish. They have extra incentive to take it from us. So there, the isser is not so bad. The possibility is not, the chash is not so bad, but their drive to take it is greater, and therefore we're more choishish they're going to take it than along the lines of what would be an issa d'oraisa. Okay, so the Taz says, but nowadays that the guys don't have chibas nisuch, so it only needs one sim. It doesn't need two siman. Okay, so the Taz says, the Shach says, well, maybe that's only b'diavad. He's not so sure. He's not convinced that we should say like that. This question of the goyim have chibas nisuch, which we talked about that also, and those siman is questionable. The Ramah says they don't. The Shach says that only means b'diavad, not like that. Okay, so I put it onto this side. But my computer's not there. I put it onto this side. Okay, but it's not so clear if it is. Okay, it's questionable. The Mechaber puts it onto the side, so to speak, is Isun D'Oraisa. And then vegetables is also somewhat questionable. Vegetables mean the vegetables kosher. The question is the vegetables that were not. I have vegetables that were checked, and the chashash is maybe he'll switch them for vegetables that were not checked. So there, the eating the bug is an issa d'oraisa. But in most cases, eating the vegetables is only issa d'rabanan. Okay, if he gives me a vegetable that wasn't checked, it only has a miyad amatzui. Okay, that's one angle of it. The only reason why the bugs are not bottled is because of the barriers and related things like that. So I think those are also on the side of the Rabbanan, okay, that it needs one simon, but it needs a simon. I don't remember where, Yankee and I were in a place, and a mashgiach came in every morning to check the vegetables. He checked all the vegetables, and then he left. And it was like we said to them, so how do you know when he walks out the door that the guy doesn't just bring in more vegetables? I mean, how do you know? He checked, this much. It wasn't in our city, a different city. He checked, 10 pounds of romaine, and if they want more, who's stopping them to bring them more? There was no ending on it. There was no.
Who's stopping them from treif meat?
It was a milk restaurant. So those are fair questions, okay? But this is
the answer is whoever's the local mashgiach is, or the he looks out for that. Right?
No, but with the vegetables, it's very often you're having the unchecked stuff sitting here and the checked stuff sitting here.
It needed help. Okay, it needed help. So whatever. I don't remember where it was, but if I did, I wouldn't tell you. Okay, so that's what the Mechaber Pas is like. Okay, but the Shach says no. It's not enough to whether it's a Deraisa or Rabbanan. The Chashash is how much the guy has to gain how much he has to gain by switching one for the other. If there's a big benefit, meaning money-wise, etc., it needs 2 simanim, and if it's a small benefit, then only 1 simanim. If I would have been put more together, I would have rearranged this according to the Shach. Maybe we could have rearranged it. Okay, but Lamaisa, Rabbi Shachta said we should be choshesh with both sides. That's one thing. We should be choshesh with both the Shach and the Mechaber, meaning whether it's a deraisa or there's a lot to gain, we should have 2 simanim. But in practice, there's usually not enough kamina. I don't mean in your house. I mean in commercially, there's usually not enough kamina because for 2 reasons. First of all, the Mechaber says that if you sign your name in Hebrew, which is a common way people make simanim, every letter counts as a siman. So if I write Yoin Vav L'Parshas Kisei, that was 10. That was just 10 simanim. Okay, if I know every letter that I write is another siman. I write David Cohen, so that's 6 letters. That's Shulchan Aruch. So every letter counts as a siman. Okay, if you do it right, we'll talk in a second what it means to write correctly. But if you do it correctly, every letter counts as a siman. That's one thing. And the second thing is, and Minchas Yaakov says that if you have something that's really, really difficult to forge or to get past, a siman mufak, then that counts as 2 simanim. So you could have 1 siman, but 1 siman which is really good counts as 2 simanim. Okay, so in practice, the simanim that we make usually qualify for one of these 2. So the nafkamina between 1 siman and 2 simanim is not such a practical nafkamina. Doesn't need 1 or 2. Usually we use either a siman mufak. We'll talk, I think, today about what a siman mufak is, or you sign your name. When you sign your name, you're almost automatically going to qualify for having 2 simanim.
They sell fish in stores, kosher fish of different type, like white fish, ground.
It's coming.
With one seal around, one seal.
It's coming. Okay, it's coming.
These are all for commercial companies who are using them in the factory, right? Meaning glycerin, good gelatin, all these things.
Anything.
Now, what happens when they get opened?
Why what?
What happens when they get opened, after they get opened?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a fair question. That's going to be next time. We'll talk about those kind of, I hope, I'll see if I get around to it, more practical from that side, okay? Okay, so now, another thing, the Mechaber says that a lock, a physical, like a lock and key, only counts as 1 siman, and you can't use it for things that need 1 siman. You can only use it as a second siman. It cannot be the only siman to have a lock. And you're like, look at me funny, like, really? Are you serious? Can't be like everybody would use a lock to do that. So the good news is, Dr. Tshuva says, yeah, that's because they had not such good locks. Okay, but our locks are much better. Dr. Tshuva lived some time ago. Our locks are much better, and therefore we can count that as a siman. That's perfect siman. And something like Rebecca said, it can be a siman muvak. Okay, and in fact, that's what people do all the time. Okay, what do you say?
Even our locks you can pick.
That's correct. So the truth is, we do it as 2 simanim, as a siman muvak. You go to a restaurant, and they what's the control that the owner, who's not Shem Shabbos, doesn't change the things? We lock the door, and he doesn't have the key to the door. That's our siman. Okay, we lock the refrigerator. We say that's our siman. That's the whole siman for $1 zillion worth of meat that's in the place. Is the siman is we lock the door. Okay, so we talked about this when we did Sim Kufi Daled, and it's a question. It's a good question because as Akiva said, somebody showed you how it really is so really easy to get past locks. Okay, there's another angle to it, which is I'm making it like the problem with the lock is that it's easy to get through. And Dr. Chu was saying, no, our locks are better. Our locks are better. There's another angle, not for today, another angle, which is there's another difference between a lock and a siman. A lock, if you get past the lock, you would never know the person did it. Okay, it's not. Once you get past it, you got past it. As opposed to a siman, if I sign my name on the thing, you would notice it when you came back that it was broken through. Okay, the lock, you don't notice that it's broken. If I have a fake key, or if I guess the combination, or if any of the dozen other ways that our friend taught us how to do, how to break into houses, then it's not so noticeable. Okay, but we do use locks. It's not partial at all, but everybody uses locks. Okay. Okay, now, what does it take to make a good seal? Oh, we're ahead of ourselves. Okay, what does it take to make a good seal? First, I'm going to give you a bunch of the things that Poskim say with some applications and then some other things. Okay? The first thing is, one way to make a siman is by writing something in Lashon Kodesh, with the assumption that the person who you're protecting against doesn't know how to write things in Lashon Kodesh. Okay, so that means is that if the person you're protecting against is Israeli, and he knows how to write Hebrew letters just like you do, then the obviously doesn't do you any good. That's not doing you any good over there. Okay, or this came up once in a slaughterhouse. They have to mark the carcasses as being kosher treif, because what happens is there's kosher and treif all over the place. Okay, literally three quarters of the meat is not kosher. So this kosher treif all over, they have to mark, and they want to mark the actual carcass itself. Okay, so they have this great idea. We're going to mark, if you mark the carcass when it's still warm, I mean right after shechita, when it gets cold, how do I explain this? The siman could not be made the next day. Okay, you can only make this siman when it's warm, when the meat is fresh. Okay, I'll show you what one looks like. Okay, you can only when you make that slice in the meat when it's warm, it opens up in a way that if you made that slice in the meat when it was cold, it wouldn't look like that. So the point is, right after shechita, they make a siman on the meat, and they make the siman, and it's a siman that can't be added later on. You can't do it when the rabbi's not there because it won't work anymore. Okay, but this was an example of a siman that was should not be considered good, and that's because although it's a Hebrew letter, right, it's supposed to be a gimel, but it's a very crude and obvious Hebrew letter. They always shechted on Tuesdays. Okay, so they always made a gimel for Tuesday. Okay, so that gimel is really easy to copy. There's nothing very fancy about that thing. And they said, well, really we should do is they would put in the other version was to put in the letter and the parsha is like it would be gimel chaf for parshas kiseitze, or they put in daf yomi or the day of the month or something that kept changing and that wasn't as crude as this gimel looks like, which is it's like a very like really you don't think I could copy that? I mean, should be pretty easy to copy that. Okay, okay. Now an exception to. Even though I told you that if the guy speaks Hebrew, reads Hebrew, writes Hebrew, it doesn't count. The price if you write something that's more distinct, like I signed my name, my signature in Lashon Kodesh, even if you could write Hebrew, that's considered a good siman because that's not something you could copy. Okay, the next thing is if you seal the things with tape, which is a common way to do it. Not with tape with a siman on it, just generic tape. You just tape the box up and then you sign your name across it. So then, this is the first 5 that I'm going to tell you are all things coming from Poskim. The later ones are not as much. It doesn't help to sign your name on the tape, just to sign your name across the tape, which is what people would naturally do, because then the guy could just lift off the tape and put it back on. So you're supposed to sign your name half on the tape and half off the tape. That comes... Rama says that you half on tape, half off the tape, so that if you took it off, it would be really hard to get it back on exactly into the right spot. And in contrast, that's if you use regular tape. If you use Kashrus tape means a tape that has like it says on the side of it, it's all pre-printed as saying something like CRC on it or something like that. That's usually taken to be a siman muvak that the guy can't just easily just copy that, and that counts even as 2 siman.
Even though you can just put an order, same way we did.
Right. So. We assume, I'm going to get to assume in a second, but we assume that much is way beyond what we think he's going to do. Is that right? I don't know. Okay.
Keter once was left with an entire roll of CRC tape after the Pesach.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. I don't know about that case specifically. I'm coming to that in a second. That's in the second group. Okay. The Shulchan Aruch says if you have a stamp that has a lot of letters on it, I told you that if you write your name, you write 3 Hebrew letters, Daled, Vav, Daled, that's 3 Simanim. Okay, but if you have a stamp that says David on it, that only counts as 1 Siman. Okay, that itself is only, even though it has a lot of things on it, it only counts as 1 Siman. So like these zip ties that say all kinds of things on them and all kinds of numbers, that's only 1 Siman. Okay, that's only.
So why is tape better?
The number becomes mova.
So if you believe that because it has a number on it, it's a simul, because how's he going to get one that's going to be marked exactly our number? Then that's fine. My point is that just because there's a lot of things on it, only counts as 1.
Why is tape better than that?
Tape is the same. It's all the same. But there, like you said, it maybe counts as a simul. It's so good. It's taka 1 simon, but it's 1 simon. I'm just showing an example. You have a lot of things on one simon, but it doesn't count from 1. Okay. Okay. Number 4, control. Okay. A siman only works if you have control of your siman. Okay. Doesn't do any good. You said an example. It's a Pesach program had tape all over the place because they need tape to make siman and things like that. When they walked out the door, if they leave the tape around, or the tape is just sitting on the floor, whenever they want to, it's not a siman. Okay, we gave the guy the stamp. Okay, we gave him the siman that tells him he could mark anything he wants if it's kosher. Okay, and a variation of that, I told you before about marking carcasses in a shechita. So what happens like this: the big piece, the huge pieces that there are, those are easier to mark. It's a really big piece. Okay, but there are all kinds of little pieces that are connected to it. Let me explain what I mean. You shecht an animal, and it gets broken apart into a dozen pieces. There are these huge chunks, but there's also a tail and cheeks and a bunch of little pieces, the liver, a bunch of little pieces that get separated out. Okay? Now, all those pieces are broken apart before we know if the animal's a treifa. Okay, so if it's an avela, we know right away. Even then, even though it's going to be broken apart, how do you know which cheeks belong to which animal? Did it belong to the treifa or the avela, or did it not belong to them? So what they do is they mark. All the pieces get the same number. And this is a government thing also, which is the government's also going to decide if this animal is acceptable is health-wise to be passed through to people to use. So the government wants to make sure, do we know that the liver from animal 26 is from the right animal? Okay, so what happens is you have to mark the animals before it gets broken apart. They'll put tag, and the tag will say 27 there'll be 10 pieces that have 27 in them. One in each of the parts that are going to be broken apart gets one of those tags into it. Okay, and then they break it into 1,000,000 pieces, and then they decide, was it a treifa? And the government decides, is it a healthy animal? So that marking has to be done correctly. You have to make sure that the lungs for 27 matches the carcass of 27. Because if it's the wrong one, you'll decide there are 5 treifas, but the 5 treifas are not the ones that you're going to separate as not kosher. I'm bringing it to this one as in if you don't control the label or the tape, you don't know what has a siman on it. If you mark the wrong animal, then
this is beyond chasimus.
What do you say?
It's like beyond chasimus.
Yes. But just in my mind, it came together. Yes, but unfortunately, it can happen. So it's siman in my mind. They're connected to siman, as in you lost the tape and you marked the wrong animal, then you blew it.
They're not going to gain anything. I'm going to hunt down and find.
You're right. It had nothing to do with gaining because there's the same amount. We have 10 livers that were kosher. Whether it's these 10 or those 10, we don't get anything from it. It makes no difference whether it's this one or that one. They're all the same. It's good. And no one's doing it on purpose. But the question, if they're not set up well, then they're going to get messed up. Yes. Okay. And the last of this group is the din is weight is not considered a siman because you could just refill a container back to the way it was. So like if you have a tanker and the tanker has this many gallons of product into it, then that many gallons is not a siman because you could just refill it to that amount of things. Okay. However, where did I don't know whether I had a good example. I don't know what happened to it. Okay, anyhow, maybe it's next time. But l'chayra, that's only true when it's something that could be refilled. Okay, we have a container with this much stuff into it, we can refill it. what if I have a piece of chicken? Okay, the chicken weighs a very specific amount. It doesn't weigh. It's not something we refill. This piece of chicken weighs 1.38 pounds. Okay, this chicken weighs that. How much it weighs? We can find another one that weighs exactly that amount. To me, that didn't sound like that was a realistic possibility. The taka weight would be a simon. It's only for things that we fill up. You say I filled up. I gave you 2 pounds of pastrami. Okay, I can give you 2 more pounds of straight pastrami. I can make 2 pounds of the same thing. That's where weight doesn't count. Not if I have something that's close to impossible to replace. Okay, now 4 more small things about this about making a good simon. One is the technology, and that is as it becomes easier and easier for people to make new things, like to order new tape. Okay, so the people making Simanim have to stay one step ahead of those people. So if it becomes easier to make tape, then we have to make holograms that are better than that, or we have to make plumbers that are better than those kind of things. The old plumbers that they used to have, I don't know if you know, they stopped using plumbers, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, because it's easier to take them up, put them right back onto another one, okay? But at the time they thought it was a good simon. Eventually they say, no, this is not a good simon. And they have to come up with something new you have to keep coming up with a new one. The seriously uses certain invisible ink, okay? So we're staying ahead of them by using invisible ink as something that they won't know or they won't realize is there to catch up with it. We have self-voiding tape, okay? So we have to be one step ahead of what the technology, what they could do easily, like. It used to be like if you could print something on a piece of paper and it would say on the, kosher, that was like a symbol. Well, that's silly now because anybody can print the word kosher on a thing, Okay.
Kosher.
Yeah. Well, then they didn't even know how to spell that. Okay. Okay. Next, you have to think about where the simon's going to go, whether it's going to do you any good. Okay. If I have tape that comes off in the freezer or ink that smudges when it gets cold, then that's not going to do me any good.
We'll do you because the guy's not.
You'll never think that it's kosher.
Yeah.
Okay, that's true. Yes, that's true. Okay, that's true. Sorry, again, I guess simon-wise it's okay. It just doesn't help the Jews. Okay, okay. But what about like this? If I take meat and I shrink wrap it, I put it in a cryovac machine. Okay, so you say cryovac machine. That's a simon because there's no way if the guy switched the meat, there's no way he could replace that. Okay, that's fine. That's a good simon, but it's only a good simon if we're not talking about a meat store. Okay, if we're talking a meat store where they have their own cryovac machine, then being in a cryovac doesn't mean anything. So we have to think about what we're going to use as simon because it doesn't mean anything. If it was in my house and I left the cryovac meat on the counter and the shuksa came in, I don't have to worry that she's changing because there's no way. How would she possibly do that? She couldn't possibly change it. But in the store, that doesn't mean anything. Okay, 2 more.
You have to check the chasima that is intact. You have to see if you forgot to check it.
You do not have to check it. You actually do not have to check it.
You're not Kosher is going to do it.
You don't have to check it, correct. There's actually, but I'm not talking about this. There's Ramah about what happens if you came back and it was ruined, but it looks like it was a mistake. No one did it maliciously. In a lot of cases, you can be make about that, even that case also. But you don't have to check it. No. Okay.
Most rejections of like kosher grape juice that come in are pretty clear that by mistake they popped off.
So it's a whole bunch of cases. A whole bunch of when we can and when we can't do that. There's the Ramah says you don't have to be so choshesh for it. The question is, but he didn't do it on purpose. But what happens did he take advantage once it was already broken? That's a question. Not for now. Okay, number 3. It has to be tamper-proof. So like there are people who say I'll put a sticker on the box, on the pizza box, and say that's my simon. Okay, I have a simon that is coming from a kosher place. I say, what kind of simon is that? Okay, you just open the box, you can put a new pizza in it. How did the simon on the box prove to you that this don't say what you want to say. How do you prove that this pizza came from that place? Just by putting it, you have to put it in a way that if you would open it, it would be noticeable. If you use it to close opening, but if you just put it on the top of the box, that doesn't do any good. Okay, that most people would think.
Do we have any halach into why maybe it does do some good?
Right now there's a to do about the case Yossi mentioned before, which is about the fish containers. Okay, that's where it comes out because fish is an issue derisa. So fish salads come in these little, I don't know what you call them, these little round containers, and the simon that it has on it is just that there's like a plastic band around the outside of it, and people have shown all kinds of creative ways to get past them. Okay, they could get them off and back on without making a to do about it. It really depends on what it is.
Who's selling these? These are like in the store.
Yeah, you walk into a store, but in other words, it was distributed by who knows who, and it's all over the place. You walk into Jewel, okay, it's just sitting there. You can buy it. You can buy Goto. It was also delivered by someone who was not Shem Shabbos.
Why are they concerned about it? The company themselves, or the government, or food safety? Why are they concerned about it?
I'm not sure. That's a fair question. I'm not sure. Maybe for the same thing the rabbis who thought it's true that if you really wanted to, you could get to it. But realistically, they weren't so concerned that someone's going to actually do that. Okay, so it depended on the situation, how easy it was to pop it open. But
I mean, it's as good as one seal, right? We're asking this as good as one seal. The question is why
it would be
it's not
one
two
seal.
seals.
But for fish, we would need two seals. That's why the question is okay. And last but not least,
So what's the answer? So
they hoped for the best. They thought that it was too. Sometimes people looked
the game was too small for the third.
Sometimes they looked at it and said, "Oh, this is terrible. We need to have a better simon." And sometimes they looked at it and said, "Nah, such a to do. In fact, you could do it just like our friend who could break into any house. Okay, who learned how to break into locks. But realistically, they said, "No, that's not for a regular guy."
Sticker on the container. What is it?
But
kosher sticker on the
You
container?
can open
but you can open
So
close
what
the
is
container.
for? The guy's gonna open it up, take out the kosher tuna.
It's better quality.
He's gonna eat it.
And put it in chafe instead. That's what oat's Kosher for. That's why we
The
do
guy
it.
who's in the commercial business.
So that's a different.
wants
No,
one
wait.
thing.
So that's true. That's a different angle, which is the guy in the truck has nothing to gain. He has 500 cases of boxes of tuna salad in here. So what would he get from mine? He has 1 million boxes in here. What mine is not any. That's not. You're right. For that guy, there's less of a chashash. Why don't they just sitting in the store in my house?
Sitting in the store, and the store owner is.
Or the shiksa who's in the house who wants to take something.
And she needs the kosher tuna, so it's a little bit better than the trepa tuna, so she's gonna.
Or a consumer. A consumer will walk in, well, it's real expensive, schmuck tuna, take it home, and put back trace tuna and return it.
And return it. No, stores don't take food back.
In a container, sealed container?
I don't. Okay, I don't.
Save
Think
$1.
Yeah.
Okay. Last but not least is call Hamas Korea, and that is like this. There have been situations where you get a box, literally a box of meat, and you say to the hashgacha, "Where's the siman? Where are the simanim on this box?" I'm sorry, and you say around the box of meat, there's a band around the outside that says the name of the hashgacha on it. Okay, let's say the name of the hashgacha or the name of the place or whatever, all kinds of stuff on it. And you say, that's not a simon because you just take it on and off. It's not attached in any way. It just comes right off and goes right back on. They say, no, that's not the simon. The simon is whatever, something else that's in the package, that's the simon. That thing that you see on the outside is not a simon. And our response back was, to everybody who looks at it looks like it's a simon. It says on it, the name of the hashgacha and the name of all kinds of things on it. It looks like it's the simon. So if I see that on the package, I say, oh, it has a simon on it. The fact that he says, no, I didn't mean that. I meant something on the inside is a simon. But if I opened it up and I saw that, I would say, I don't look for anything on the inside. I'm happy with what I saw on the outside. So he says, no, I didn't mean that. That's not the simon. So I'm saying, by adding on something that looks like it's a simon, which is actually not tamper-proof, it's not really a simon, I've lost out from the fact that now people will think that was the real simon and not be alert to say, I need my chicken to have a simon on it. And they'll just...
Someone who's switching it is going to be alert that maybe there's multiple Simanim, or maybe they have to put everything back exactly how it was.
You mean he'll think that I know that there's another simon on the inside?
Or he should be paying attention to that.
So he's looking and he says, I see there are simon on the inside. I can't switch it because the guy is there. No, well, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Okay, that's a thought. I didn't think of it like that.
Isn't that the whole chash the whole time? We're not just talking about like the guy who's
The consumer.
like the distributor would look at it and they would say, "Oh, that's the simon." We're talking about whoever is actually going to switch the package inside.
So that guy, you think he would be afraid to do it because he sees simanim on it. He can't replace them. So he'll see siman on the inside. He'll say, in his mind, maybe people know about that, and they're going to be looking out for it. Okay, so you're saying, so that's why it's good. So the fact that it's extra stuff on the outside, who cares? For his perspective, that's okay. So that's a limud chaz. Better than our pizza boxes that I can't explain.